As I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I take a look at my life, realize there's nothing left. Because I've been blasting and laughing so long that even my mama thinks that my mind is gone. But I ain't never crossed a man that didn't deserve. Well, I didn't think you'd start the Pointman Podcast with Gangsters Paradise this morning, but here we are. I am Zach. This is Luke.
What's up?
And we are here to help men connect with the Bible, help men grow in their faith through this podcast and through the Pointman ministry here as a part of that church. Before we get into the conversation for today, make sure you like and subscribe here on YouTube. If you're listening on a podcast platform, rate and review the pod. Helps more people find it as we are trying to reach more men for Jesus. That's simple, and that's it.
Yep. And
so help us in that mission by being a part and liking, subscribing, rating, reviewing, wherever you're at so that more people can find us.
Yeah. And pull your Bible out and turn to Psalms 23 because that's what we're talking about today.
Yes, Psalms 23. We're actually just going to read the whole thing because it's not very long. It's actually quite short. And so here we go. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepared a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anointed my head with oil. My cup overflows. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. It's good stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Every time you read it, it's kind of like, that's good.
It just washes over you.
Yeah. Just let it like bask in it. It's nice. Yeah, it's good.
So the topic is courage.
Yep.
We are in a podcast series on courage for the rest of this month, leading up to our Bold Breakfast number 2. If you were not at the first one, I highly recommend you come and join us for the second one. It was an incredible conversation. We have a guest. We have a message inside of our series, Bold Men, and then we have a guest who comes in, and we're talking through the topic of the day. So last month, it was leadership. We had a football coach come in, and it was an awesome conversation with him. This month is courage, and we have a former professional bull rider who will be in the house. This is not your local rodeo. This is a man who was one of the top bull riders in the world, on the world stage, traveling, competing, and winning, and doing an incredible job on that stage. He'll be joining us to dive into this conversation. His name is Brandon Davis, and we're excited to have him join us. He's been on the pod before, and so some of his longer form of his actual story is a few episodes, a bunch of episodes back actually now, but it's on here. So go check that out. Make sure you join us September the 17th, I believe. Is the third Tuesday of this month at 6:30 a.m. here at that church in Sherwood for that conversation. But today we're talking about Psalm 23 and what it has to do with courage.
Yep.
I want to start off just verse 1 looking at this. It says, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. The Lord is my shepherd. Shepherd is a weird term we don't really use today. When we think about those who are taking care of animals, we give them names such as rancher, farmer, cowboy. I'm sure there's more, but that's the names that we give these people. They are literally they're cultivating animals most of the time for food or for resources. In this sense, the shepherd in the Bible was the one who was the protector. He was the watcher of the flock. And so when David is writing this song, the Lord is my shepherd, the Lord is my protector, the Lord is my keeper, is some things that we could insert in that term shepherd. And what does that have to do with fear? Well, a lot of it is he's giving over the things that of his life to God to shepherd and to protect him from.
Yeah, there's as soon as you think about fear and an animal that is very fearful, everyone always says the sheep is like the most fearful of them all. Besides maybe like a chicken, I guess. But
they're definitely the most vulnerable.
Yeah, they got nothing. They got little hooves to.
Yeah, I've never seen a sheep fight, but I'm gonna guess they don't do it very well.
Yeah, maybe they'll bite you. I don't know.
I'm sure that they hurt each other. Again, part of the shepherd's job is to keep them safe.
Hey, that's good too, because you can think about you fighting each other and the shepherd. Anyway,
that's a good time. Yeah, that's a good thought.
That's a good point.
Different message.
Yeah, different message. But so the shepherd is taking care of the sheep, and yes, we are the sheep that the shepherd is taking care of. But you can think of like, man, I'm not a little sheep, I'm scared, but like, it gives you a lot of peace and a lot of comfort to know that someone is there protecting you. That's more than yourself. You don't know the dangers that are coming. The sheep has no clue all the dangers that could come and get them, the wolves or whatever else is out there. And I mean, it's more than that too. It's like the parasites and the things on the ground that could hurt them, or not lead them to a sharp cliff or whatever. There's a ton of things out there that you have no clue what could hurt you, but the shepherd knows.
Or running away and being alone and being stuck to defend yourself. And part of the flock, the shepherd can contain and to watch over the flock of sheep or people. That's weird looking at it. But you're right, one could run off and he finds himself on his own dealing with the things of the world by himself without the guidance of the shepherd.
And it's lonely out there, but the shepherd's like, I'm going to go out there and get my sheep so he's not lonely.
Yeah.
And bring him in with the herd.
Bring him back into the group.
It's good.
Yeah. So I think if we were to look at Psalm 23, the biggest point when we're talking about courage and overcoming fear is verse 4. It says, even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff comfort me.
Yep. This is not the gangster's paradise, so I guess.
No, but there's two ways that we can look at this, and I think that it's important both ways. One is the spiritual aspect, the emotional, mental aspect of this. This is the things that are dangerous in our life in those aspects. God is there, and he's the shepherd over those aspects of our life. He's shepherding us in our spiritual journey, shepherding us against the things that are causing mental anxiety and fear, shepherding against the things that we are just generally fearful of from a mental, an internal aspect, if you will. But this verse, some believe it's a literal conversation about walking through a valley where there could be bandits, where there could be animals that could harm him. And so he's giving those anxieties and those fears in the literal journey physically over to God as well to protect him in this valley. And I think in our life, we do, I think, a good job as men a lot of times trying to give the mental, emotional things over to God. The things that we just understand are outside of our control and understanding. The things that we cannot do on our own, to work through on our own. We do try to give those to God. Most of us who are followers do. The physical things, we're men. We're like, we want to protect. Yep. We want to provide. We want to develop people. Like, we're just kind of instilled with this desire to be the builder, to be the king, the prophet, the priest that we talk about in Pointman. We're kind of designed that way. And so it's harder for us to physically give up our protection to God and to give over the fears of physical negative impacts to him, to allow him to be the protector of us in those moments as well.
Yeah, a lot of times when I'm thinking about this verse, and I think about it a lot, it really creeps back in my brain all the time. A lot of times I don't use it for physical fear. I'm not sure if you're supposed to, but I guess you can use it however God needs you to use it. But a lot of times it's like fearful of like conversational or tough situations other than physical fear. I mean, maybe you are supposed to just use it in physical. I don't know, but whenever I'm using this verse, it's always like a situation that I do not want to do or a conversation that I do not want to have. And if I pray this verse over my life and pray to God, God is there with me in that moment, because he says, even though you go through the darkest valley, don't be afraid. And you're like, okay, don't be afraid. But why, though? It's because you are close beside me, and you're going to be with me in that conversation. You're going to be with me in that moment that I have a terrible attitude or a bad vibe that's coming into it, and I'm like, God, be with me. And you're like, okay, I'm comforted because I'm going walking through it, but God's going to be with me. The shepherd is going to be protecting you through that dark valley.
I think physical is an important part of this. The Bible points out, don't be anxious about anything. It doesn't say don't be anxious about the things of the spirit. Don't be anxious about the things of the mind. Don't be anxious about anything. And through prayer and supplication, make those things made known to God. And so when you're dealing with the physical fears of life too, give those things to God. Again, we talked about it on the last episode, but discernment's important. If you're looking at discerning between doing the right thing, doing the thing that's fearful because you think I need to overcome this thing because it's a move that it's inside of God's will for my life, versus I need to overcome this thing because it's a selfish endeavor, it's a selfish motivation. That's a discernment question. But the physical works that same way too. Should I go jump out of a plane? You're making a decision. The outcome, give anxiety, give your fear to God. I'm not saying don't do that, but I'm saying that you've made a physical decision to jump out of that airplane. You're kind of taking on some of that that onus on yourself to make that decision. But I think in the general life, like let's say you have a physical ailment. That's a physical thing. Are you going to give that to God? Or are you going to rely on yourself to overcome the physical ailment?
Yeah, the physical ailments are like, I don't know, like it's talking about like even though a sickness is coming through and you're like, this could pass easily, but then sometimes large things happen in your life where like you break your arm, which I've done twice, and
me too, both of them.
And you're going through it, and it's rough. And God's like, hey, why are you fearful? Why are you have this terror? You're going through a tough situation, and you're like, I'm not trusting you to be with me, and I need to have that trust with you, even though it stinks. It's hard and it's rough to go through it, and there's nobody here with me. I'm all alone. God's like, oh, you're not alone. You're with me. I got you.
Yeah, when my daughter was sick and she was in the hospital, there was like a battle in my brain of how to handle the situation. And so on one side, I have this mindset of, all right, let's get the doctors, let's get the people, let's get the resources, let's figure out how we're going to overcome this thing. That was me. I'm trying to take control of this tough situation and make something happen in the tough situation. I had a crisis of character, and it'll actually be in, I think, my message on pain for the semester, where there was a day where I decided I'd never had a crisis of faith where I didn't believe in God. But there was a day I did in this moment. And it's because I had put all of my eggs in the personal basket, but I had not released the pain and anxiety and the fear of the outcome to God. And so I found myself alone on an island trying to figure out how to do this thing, and it crushed me. And it not just crushed me mentally and physically, it also started to crush me spiritually, to the point where I lost faith in the fact that God even exists at some point. The outcome of that, though, was there was a reversal. I had family, I had community who was very pouring in the whole time and showing me a correct example. And so I was able to bridge that gap and overcome that fear and anxiety that caused this moment. Yeah. And when I was able to rectify that crisis of faith and was able to place my anxiety and fear with God, the outcome no longer scared me. In fact, I moved from this, like, how can we make this thing work, to an understanding that at some point we're going to leave this hospital, and it's either going to be she goes with us or she doesn't go with us. But I was comfortable in both outcomes because I knew that I had placed that fear and anxiety with God.
Yeah, there's a lot of moments in people's lives where that I think they have that crux, that moment where they could either choose to go one way or another way. Thank God you chose the path that you did, because it's easy. I would say it's 100 times easier, or it's the default, where people will say, "Well, God's not real. You know, I don't believe in it anymore because of these horrible things that are happening to me, because of this dark valley that I'm walking through. It's too dark. I'm all alone in it, and it's horrible." You could have chosen the other path, and I don't know where you would be at today, but I don't know if it would be anywhere close to what you're doing right now.
I don't.
Situations,
but it wasn't the cliche like, sure. Oh, she's gone. Like, there is no God. It wasn't that. It was because I had not relinquished my fear of the outcome to Him, and so trying to figure this thing out on your own, you feel hopeless. Like, there's nothing that can happen to fix this thing because I can't magically heal. You know, it's not, I can't divinely heal. Magically is not really the word I wanted there. I can't divinely heal her, but God could have if that was His will. The outcome, though, was grander. His plan was grander than this one little girl being able to be healed. And you have to be able to, whenever you relinquish that fear of the outcome, you relinquish the result of the outcome to God as well. You give Him the good, the bad. He has a purpose for the good and the bad to happen. He has a reason why it's happening, and His will, and it moves the needle greater than we can ever see it. We can't imagine it happening. That was a turning point. It became a drastic turning point spiritually for not just me, but our entire family and what we were doing and the things that were important. It moved the needle for our family. We were very much, which you would probably say we're still a very segmented family, but we were very much in our own lanes. We were doing our own thing a lot of times, and we would come together for like occasions. but it changed the way we viewed family time. It changed the way we viewed everything in a positive aspect. And then it was definitely inside of us releasing that fear to God and having courage that only can come from Him working in those moments that caused all of those drastic changes to occur.
Yeah, the Bible says that God's ways are higher than ours and His thoughts are higher than our thoughts. And we only see this tiny picture of our life at this whatever moment that you're in. And it's brutal. It's hard sometimes where you can't see the whole scope of everything. And you're like, man, this is rough. This is hard. This is terrible. It's never going to end. If we could kind of zoom out and see the big picture of our lives or the generations before us and the generations after us. In those moments, I think they would make a ton more sense. But God's like, I don't need you to see that. I need you to have faith in me in this tiny moment that you're in, because I can see the big picture. I have the whole scope of eternity. I know everything. And you're like, I kind of wish I could see that, but thank God I can't, because then my faith wouldn't grow in that moment.
Yeah.
And there's a ton of times in my life where I'm like, this is absolutely brutal. Sometimes, a lot of the times, I've done it to myself. Bad situation I put myself in, and I'm like, why did I do that? And God's like, hey, you had a chance to grow your faith and you didn't, or you had a chance to grow your faith and you did. Here's the bigger scope. Maybe you got a little bit further in life, and you're like, that's the reason why. That's the reason why. And in the moment, there's nothing that's going to make you can say to yourself that you're going to know that can make you feel better. But if you read the Word and God says, I'm with you in those moments, then that makes it all the difference.
Yeah. I'll walk through the valley of the shadow of death. I will fear no evil. Yeah. You know, it's tough, and it's tough to realize that in real time too. And you know, what does it have to do with courage necessarily? Fear is it's not really the opposite of courage. Courage is the tool that we use to overcome the fear. If that makes sense. They're not two sides of the same coin. They're really, you can have courage in different aspects of things that you really don't. Maybe it's courage in something that causes you anxiety. Maybe it's courage in something that's trivial even. It's not even like a fear necessarily. It's something you just don't really want to do. And you need the courage you give the example of the first time you served. There may have been some fear in that, but in reality, you're going to hang out with a youth group. Yeah. The fear level, or maybe it's not that. Maybe it's that the tears of fear don't necessarily reflect the amount of courage needed. And so let's go with the example of you going to serve at a youth group for the first time.
Well, do the example of the working out fear of hard work. I love that example. I think it works perfectly for this situation. I don't know if I'm throwing you off track.
No, you're fine. Yeah. So when you're working out, let's say, so I coached Olympic weightlifting for years, and there is in Olympic weightlifting, everything ends over your head. And so for a lot of people when they first get started, they're terrified to throw a barbell over their head. As you grow in your understanding of the movement and what you're doing, the level of fear begins to drop. That only works though because you had the courage to add more weight to the bar to get it over your head. You reach a point where you will try things that you think there is a 1% possibility of success and a 99% possibility of failure, but you have taken that fear level because you were willing to be courageous in trying these things building up to this point. Box jumps is one. Box jumps absolutely scare people. And so what we would do in weightlifting, we do them a ton. We did them a ton there. We would do them normal heights like you would see in a gym, but we would also start stacking stuff on top of each other just to see how high someone could jump. And it terrifies people at first because if you fall, it hurts. You're going to bang your shins. I have a scar across my shin where it went all the way through the muscle. Like it can be gross. It can be painful. But whenever you build the courage in people to be able to try new things, their fear level begins to drop. They begin to become successful. They begin to become stronger. They're willing to put another plate on the bar to try that extra weight. In turn, they set a record. It increases their courage to try it again, decreases their fear of the movement, and they begin to build and get stronger day after day until the next thing you know, they're willing to try these things that are just kind of crazy. Like you'll see it and you're like, that's a lot. Like I remember,
I'm fearful for you.
Yeah. As a coach, sometimes you're like, I know they need to try that, but I'm really a little worried that they might not be able to. That's like fine. There's a level you have to get to where you're like, all right, let's push. Let's see. Let's figure it out.
Well, I wonder if God is like that sometimes, where he's like looking at us like, I know you need to build your faith, but I'm nervous for you. You know, you think God ever has that thing where like, I need you to build your faith in this moment. I need you to.
Well, he
do
knows
this.
the outcome.
He does.
And
but
so fear
he knows
is
it's gonna
not
be tough on you.
Yeah, maybe an understanding.
No.
I don't know if it's not fear.
No.
Why would he fear the thing he already knows the outcome of?
Well, he knows it's gonna be rough on you, and that's the same thing as like when you're children. You're like, I need you to do this. Yes, it's gonna be tough. I need you to eat that piece of broccoli on your plate. You're gonna probably gag or whatever, but I need you to do it. I need you to go through it.
I love my grandpa. My grandpa is the biggest supporter of all of the crazy things I've done over the years. Any race that just seems astronomically stupid, any event I want to go do that he's like, that's the dumbest thing ever. He's the first one to get in the truck and to drive to the race or pull the camper so we have somewhere to sleep the night before. Every single time I've ever done a huge effort, he calls me about 2 days before I go and he's like, now you can stop whenever it gets too hard. And I love him for it. And I love his support. And he's never once, when we're there, it's let's go. Like, let's get it done. But that call drives me crazy every single time because he's so well-meaning. And he's trying to care for me physically. But like when you're going into a big effort or when you're going into a tough thing in life, you can't have this mindset of there's an exit. Because if there's an exit, whenever you become scared of the situation, you're going to take the exit. And so you have to enter this mindset of like, I'm going to do this thing. There is no other option except for we're going to accomplish the task. And so let's say it's something to do with our family. Like I'm fearful of teaching God's word to my kids. I'm scared of doing this thing. If you look to an exit, if you look to, there's a YouTube video. There's someone who can teach it to them. Oh, they go to kids ministry at church on Sunday. Oh, they come on Wednesday nights while we're at Pointman. They're in the kids ministry. Are they getting taught God's word? Yes. That's not an exit for you not being the spiritual leader in your family, though. You have to do the study, do the work, and understand there's no exit strategy on you being the spiritual leader of your family. There's no exit strategy on you sitting down, opening the Bible, and talking with your kids about what it says. You have to do those things. You have to pray with your kids. You have to be the spiritual leader in your household. And so allowing yourself this exit strategy of somebody else has got this, or we can just sit down and watch this Bible Tunes or Veggie Tales back in the day or whatever's out there now. No. Those are great supplements, but they're not the exit strategy. Whenever he's telling me like, you can stop. He's so well-meaning, and we're so well-meaning by bringing our kids to church, and we're so well-meaning by choosing the things that they view and they take in, but we can't allow our fear to keep us from doing the right thing. And all of those conversations, whenever he'll tell me that, I'm saying there is no other option. Like, I'll stop whenever I'm broken, or I'll stop whenever the task is done, or we're not going to this thing just for fun. Like there's a goal in mind. The goal of every man who has kids should be that I'm going to raise my kids up so that they know Jesus, that they, whenever they leave, that they will not depart from his word, that they at least have that understanding and knowledge. Of course, they have to make their own decision to follow him. We can't make that decision for them, but we can do everything within our power for them to understand and know who he is. And before they ever are outside of our house. I was watching a deal on Instagram maybe last night, and the guy was talking about the actual amount of time we have with our kids. And it's like 90%, I think is what he said, of our influential time is between 0 and 18 years old. And so that's the time where we have to be the most intentional about our influential nature when we're talking with our kids. We can't forsake that time period and go and pawn them off other places. That's the time that we get to build our kids up and to know people. If you don't have kids, there's other aspects of, you have the opportunity to serve at church. Serving is a weird thing. Like you're volunteering to do work whenever you're not getting paid to do the work. It is what it is. But the responsibility is so huge. And I wish that more men would take on roles of responsibility, not just in things that are like building stuff and holding doors. Those things are really important, but actual taking on the spiritual mentorship aspects of people taking next steps and being intentional and going to training and going to meetings where we're talking about these things so that whenever they have the opportunity, they're not scared to have these conversations. Day after I was ordained, literally the day I was ordained, before I actually went through the ordination ceremony that night, I I had a guy come up to me on a Sunday. I guess maybe they announced it before officially. I don't remember. Something happened. So he knew I was a pastor now. I'd already learned the conversations, but I never had one. And I don't, it was baptism or I don't remember what the context was. And I was just like, I was looking for anybody around me who could help me in this conversation because I just was fearful of saying the wrong things or doing the wrong things. I knew what I was supposed to do, but I was looking for an out to offset my fear with somebody else. In reality, all I needed to do was to stop, to pray over what was about to occur, and then to have that conversation based on what I had learned and grown through. All of us as men are that way.
Yeah, and I'm preaching to myself. You're preaching to me right now because there's a lot of moments where I love your example of your run and your grandfather giving you an exit. And there's a lot of times in your life where you need to burn the boat, burn the ship,
literally burn the bridge.
Don't have a plan B because if you don't, there's always that moment where you can opt out. You can get out. I'm not dealing with this anymore. And I think it always boils down to the fear of failure. The fear of not being good enough, the fear of messing it up, the fear of just failing at whatever task or whatever thing that you think you can do. And you're like, well, if I always have an exit plan, then I don't ever have to deal with it. I can not fail because there's no chance for me to fail.
One of those races where this happens, we're out there in the middle of the night, and me and this guy are competing, and we're going lap for lap with one another. And we know we're about a mile apart from each other at any given time in the night. He starts to deal with some pain. And his daughter's like walking with him at one point. Like he's down in bed. It looks like he's about to just pack it in and go home. What he does instead of going home is he goes to his wife and says, pack up everything, put it in the car and leave. Leave me here. Leave me my cooler, leave me my food and get out of here. Just leave. Because he always had the ability to just go get in the car. But he was like, you have to go. Like, I need you gone. And so what ends up happening is he burned that bridge. He had no exit strategy at all. He had to stay until the end of the race, or he was just going to be sitting there watching everybody else run. And he ends up winning. He ends up winning big because that mental, it switched for him. He began to run faster. And then one of his friends shows up, and they begin to run together, and they're running faster. And then by the time it's all over, I believe at that point he set the record for that race distance and won the race by like 20 miles. But at one point, he was at the point of, I'm out of here. Like, I'm broken. I cannot go on anymore. But he did that. He burned his exit strategy. He said, get out of here. Leave me here by myself. I'll never forget that because I had a tent. I had 20 people, and I had a way to leave at any point. And what ended up happening was I had too many exit strategies. He had none. He ended up winning, and he won by a lot.
That's good, and you can use that strategy for a ton of things in your life. Where now I'm married, there's no exit strategy on this.
Yeah, we got to learn and grow together.
We have to figure it out. We're not getting out of this. A lot of people will do a covenant marriage for that same reason, where you're in it. There's no getting out unless something extremely crazy happens. But in your job, where you're like, I've made these decisions where I have to have this job and I have to support my family because there's no exit strategy. I'm in this job. Or if you're you have a child and now you have a kid to take care of, your responsibility. There's no like, well, sorry, I don't really want you anymore. So see you later. You're like, you need to take care of your family and your kids. So, and you can relate that aspect to all kinds of walks in your life where I need to go through this. I'm scared to fail. Yes, it's terrifying. But like you said, learning and growing, going through those situations is going to help you in every aspect of your life, having no plan B, which it's funny because I'm in the military and there's always a plan B, but in a lot of cases, you need to just get through it. Don't back out. You can't back out. You got to go through it.
And that's dealing with courage.
Yeah.
You have to have the courage to step out there without a plan B, to understand that though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Yeah. You have the exit. The only exit strategy is to give those things that are giving you fear to God and allow Him to give you the courage to overcome those things. And to know that when you're walking through these dark times, when you're walking through these hardships, when you're walking through leading your family spiritually, serving in the church, being a part of the church in the first place, walking through the doors, whenever you move into giving those anxieties, those fears up to God, then you move in a spirit of power that you just didn't have before.
Yeah. You may restart this.
No. Hey, this has been the Pointman Podcast on courage, looking at Psalm 23. A couple of things coming up. Pointman semester is in full swing here at That Church Sherwood and at That Church Cabot. Get yourself here Wednesday nights at 6:30, and make sure you're also joining us on a Sunday. We have 8:30, 10, and 11:30 services at both campuses. So make sure that you are hopping into one of those, getting involved with the community of believers around here, and putting some of these things into practical practice here as a part of the community at That Church. Like and subscribe before you get out of here, and we will see you next time.
Play them jams.
As I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I take a look at my life, realize there's nothing left.